In today's video, I want to share with you the number one strategy to stop the overwhelm in your recovery. If you're going through something like chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, long COVID, POTS, or any other associated illness, the chances are that there are going to be days where you feel absolutely horrible, you're completely exhausted, you have a lot of brain fog, and ultimately the pain tolerance is probably at an all-time low, meaning that everything that you do, every thought that you have, every process that you're doing feels extremely hard. And when things get hard, there's kind of one thing that most people do when it comes to trying to overcome that suffering, and it's actually the thing that creates more suffering. That's literally going down rabbit holes and searching for more answers to problems that you don't even really know about. And what I'm talking about is Dr. Google. You might be guilty of this where, you've had a terrible night's sleep, or maybe you've just had a really bad 5-6 days in a row. And so you start to Google, what is wrong with me? And you type in the symptoms, and then all these problems come up, and then all these different treatments pop up, and then all these different avenues of literally decreasing your energy purely because you're trying to do all these different things cognitively, when in fact the only thing that you probably need then and there is to relax, is to stop the search. Now, I'm not saying don't seek help, and I'm not saying don't investigate things that need investigating. But even then, how we go about that really matters. If we're going about that in a really desperate, overwhelmed state, and some of you have experienced this before, where nothing great, even if you find some answers, nothing great comes from that overwhelm and desperation. And in fact, I would invite you to consider that maybe the opposite approach might be really damn useful. And what I mean by that is literally, when things are hard, when things are bad, is do the basics to look after yourself, and that is it. Don't try and skip the pain, don't try and get ahead, or try and find the next quick fix that you think might work. That in itself is creating more long-term suffering and unnecessary stress on top of an already suffering and stressed body and brain. So it can feel counterintuitive to not do this, to not go down the Dr. Google rabbit hole, or searching and searching and searching on all these different problems. And in fact, we see a commonality and a theme. When people start to get better, it literally coincides with them stopping searching outside of themselves, like full stop. And I know how hard it is, because it's so hard to do, right? It sounds really simple, but it's so hard not to go down the Dr. Google rabbit hole, or it's so hard not to ask a million different questions about all the problems you're experiencing, and then being overwhelmed with 500 responses from random groups from other people who are sick and unwell. And so it can be this really negative loop cycle that you can get into if you're not aware of it. And it's interesting, we've met so many people over the last 15 years with working with people all around the world in 65 countries. And one of again, a common theme is, oh my God, Toby, like when I finally, read your work, and I've watched all these videos, and I'm working on my baseline, and I'm calming down my nervous system, I finally realized that half the problem was me looking in the wrong places. Half the problem was me searching for more problems and looking up my symptoms and self-diagnosing myself even with more problems, when I know now that focusing on my symptoms isn't going to help me get better. I know now that focusing on my health and having a health solution focus is going to help me the most with my recovery. And so my suggestion to you is, if you are really caught up with your symptoms right now, if you're really caught up with your suffering right now, just take a breath. Just pause, just for this moment, and just check in with yourself first. A little bit of reassurance can go a long way. And checking in with your body and checking in with yourself, literally your being, and just breathe. You're going through such a hard time right now. It's not easy. It's not fun. It's going to be okay. I'm going to find the right help and support, and I'm going to shift my focus. But I know that if I keep focusing on everything that's wrong with me and all my problems, this isn't the solution to feel better. And you know that because you probably tried that a bunch of times already. I want to share with you a really powerful story from a past client, Michelle. Michelle from USA, Oregon. Shout out to you, Michelle, if you ever listen to this video. When she reached out to CFS Health over almost 14 years ago now, she was in a really bad way. She was in extreme severe pain. She was on lots of pain medication. She was so bad that she'd basically been cooped up in her bedroom for the last 10 years. She was in her 60s. Or close to 60 years old. Her mother, who was in her 80s, was caretaking and looking after her. That's how bad it was. When she joined our first webinar and workshop, she was so pale and so grey. She's probably, I would say, one of the worst cases I had ever seen. And when she jumped on that workshop, she asked a question that changed the rest of her life. We were sharing all these different stories and sharing how, recovery is possible. And she said, Toby, recovery is not possible for me. I'm too unwell. I've got these problems. I've got this diagnosis. I've got this diagnosis. And to be fair, the list of diagnosis and symptoms were literally 2 pages long. And some of the diagnoses I'd never even heard of before. And so Michelle was so caught up in the diagnosis situation and her suffering, there was no space to even contemplate that recovery was possible. And so she said, and we explained how we help people and how we have a holistic focus, and we literally cover every aspect of recovery because that's ultimately what's needed for your brain and body to rehabilitate and start to thrive again and ultimately get healthy and start living again. And she said, yeah, but is it going to work for me? I've got all these problems. I've got all this suffering. I can't do anything, was her statement. And I asked her a simple question back. I said, Michelle, I can't guarantee anything. If I did, that would be ludicrous of me and very ineffective. That's not good practice to promise anything. But I want you to answer this question. If I helped you with your sleep, because your sleep's out of whack, if I helped you stop pushing and crashing and create a stable baseline so you can start to build your capacity appropriately for where you're at, if we started to implement an appropriate movement plan from your bed initially for you, because that's where you're at, and we worked on your mindset, and we stopped feeling horrible all the time and feeling depressed and having secondary anxiety and depression because life is hard, which is fair enough and understandable. But if we started to work on all these things, do you think that cohesively, potentially, it could help you move forwards? And she said, maybe. And I said, well, do you think it would make you feel any worse? And she said, no. And I said, focusing on your health can't make you feel worse unless you're focusing on it from the wrong standpoint, which is focusing on your illness and focusing on your symptoms. That can make you worse. But having a health-focused solution is going to be way more beneficial than having a symptom-focused solution. Because there is no solution when we're just focusing and fixated on symptoms. You go down this rabbit hole, it creates secondary anxiety, it creates primary anxiety, then that spirals your heart rate, then you're in a state of fear, and then that switches on your sympathetic nervous system, and then, it just repeats itself. And so if we have this calm, health-focused approach, we're going to do the right things at the right time, first and foremost, but over time, that's going to build up and it's going to improve your sleep. And when we improve your sleep, your immune system gets better. When your immune system gets better, your recovery rate gets better from physical output. And all these things just start to work better. And over time, as your health goes up, your symptoms go down. And so Michelle on that day decided, all right, I'm going to do it because I'm not going to feel any worse because we don't do anything unsafe or impractical here at CFS Health. Everything's very efficient and effective and safe. And the most important thing is each client's individual safety, meaning that they feel comfortable doing what they're doing. We're very much on the flexible side of programming because you're the person in charge of your body, right? You should never listen to someone outside of yourself if it doesn't feel right or true for you. And so Michelle joined anyway. She got our help. And within a month, it was like looking at a different person. She all of a sudden had eye color again. She had skin color coming back into her face. You could see the cheeks filling up again with joy. And what happened was she shifted her focus and attention on everything that she couldn't do, everything that was a problem, to then moving forwards with a solution and having a health-focused approach. And her mindset changed. Her body changed, her brain changed, she felt calmer. And what was happening was physiologically, she was able to start to utilize the energy better to perform tasks that were more relevant to moving her towards more of what she wanted versus away from what she didn't want. And what was crazy was within a few months, she was able to start to walk down her stairs to meet her mother for lunch and dinner. She was able to start to do restorative movement from her bed, so recondition her muscles appropriately for where she was at. And we started on a very, very small scale. And what happened was over time, that small scale got bigger and bigger and bigger. And as she felt more able, she was able to do more. And then it went to walking around in the garden every day. And then 6 months later, she reached one of her goals, which was to put her feet in the sand down the beach at Portland, Oregon. And I remember her sharing that win. It was so special for her. And then she was able to build up her capacity. And so she started doing walks. And within another 6 months, she was walking up and down the beach every single day for 20 minutes. And after a year, then she was able to go and drive 7 hours in a car to see her best friend that she hadn't seen in 20 years. Now, that same lady is living a full life today. And it's not because we did anything miraculous. In fact, she had some of the best doctors in her support crew. And they were blown away and astonished with the progress that she made. But it was just one subtle shift. The shift was to not go down the rabbit holes of searching for more problems, but in fact completely flipping the switch and having a health-focused approach. Not just for a day, not just for a week, but months on end for the body to physiologically adapt to new appropriate stimulus so then she could have more capacity, more output to do more things she wanted to do. Now, it sounds very simple. It is a little bit complicated. There's lots of different moving pieces, but it is a simplified approach. Because if you think about it, complexity doesn't need more complexity. And what you're going through is complex enough. You need simplicity. We need to break it down into simple steps that is easy and relevant and simple for you to understand and apply so you can start to move forwards. And we see this across the board. Michelle's just a very severe case to shine light on what is possible for someone who has been going through such a hard time. So if anything, take this into account that next time that things go bad or you're having a bad day, ask what you really need. Tune into what you really need. Do you really need to be consumed cognitively with more information? Or is maybe your brain and body asking for a break? At the end of the day at CFS Health, we teach body wisdom, which is being able to know what to do, when to do at the right times. And when you have body wisdom, you ultimately are in control of your life. You know what to do and when to do it based off how you're feeling. And this is something you can take with you in life, not just in recovery, but once you get better, you get to be the dictator of what's right for you. And that is super, super powerful. So stop aiming for information that makes you more overwhelmed and consumed, and instead start to aim for more in-tune body wisdom that helps you make the right decisions at the right time, that helps you move forwards to where you ultimately want to go. Hope this helps. Hit the like and love heart button if you see it, and leave a comment. What was your biggest takeaway from today's video? All the best. Sending you love. We'll speak to you soon.